But first, let me say that I do think that climate coverage has improved in the last, say, 5, 6 years. We had, at one point, a very serious coverage with what's often known as false balance. This is the attempt to adhere to the old journalistic norm that if you get one side of the conversation, you got to get the other side of the conversation. Obviously, that works very well in political coverage. It often works in business coverage. But when you get to coverage of science, the model breaks down and the norm can actually impede quality coverage. I think that in the last few years, journalists have learned to avoid false balance, and in fact, the coverage has improved. But you're absolutely right that some of the political football continues. I would say that it continues in more isolated corners of the media, places like Fox News and the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal tend to still really overrepresent the skeptical side of things, as it's called. I don't really fancy the term skeptic for a description of those who basically deny the tenets of climate science. Nonetheless, you see the New York Times, even the Washington Post, still making mistakes in this area. The most common is when you set out to cover a story about climate science and end up interviewing a bunch of politicians or activists instead, who begin to talk about science, and you quote them talking about science even though they're not really qualified to do so. So yeah, that does continue to be a problem.